I am Chithra Jeyaram. I am a filmmaker and member owner at New Day Films. I'm a physical therapist turned filmmaker with an MFA in film from University of Texas in Austin and specialize in one-person crew independent documentaries. I identify as Tamil. My work prioritizes subverting stereotypes by framing narratives that highlight perspectives, struggles, and intricacies that are left out. My short film Rags to Paths is a story of a husband, Muruganandam, who destigmatizes menstruation and framed it as a societal issue, not just a woman's issue. My next film, Foreign Puzzle, which is available at New Day Films, examines the true impact of cancer by contrasting the making and performance of a stirring dance against the backdrop of intense medical and surgical procedures and challenges of being a single mother. Right now, I'm working on my next feature, Our Daughters, which looks at open adoption in America through an immigrant lens, and I'm hoping to begin festival submissions shortly. In addition to directing and producing, I edit. Most recently, I just edited a feature called 1001 Breast Cancer, 1001 Berber Nights, which was broadcast on Moroccan television and will be playing at festivals soon in the United States. I'm an adjunct faculty at NYU and Vassar, and I'm an active organizer and member of Brown Girls Dark Mafia, New Day Films, and Vichitra Collective. I'm so delighted to be moderating this panel. We are very, very grateful that you've taken your time from your busy schedule to attend today's panels. Reframe and Refresh is a monthly series for the education and filmmaking community to have refreshing conversations that reframe our perspective. Today's panel is hosted by New Day Films. New Day Films is a unique filmmaker-run distribution cooperative providing award-winning films to educators, community groups, government agencies, public libraries, and businesses since 1971. Yes, we are more than 50 years old. Democratically run by more than 150 filmmaker members, New Day is committed to reflecting great diversity, representation, and inclusion. New Day Films has been broadcast on PBS, HBO, and other media outlets. It is celebrating over 50 years of delivering dynamic and provocative storytelling with filmmakers who have won hundreds of awards, including Emmys and Oscars, including this year's nominee for short documentary, Liu Chiang's Island in Between. A shout out to Liu. So as we are getting ready to invite our guests, please mute your microphones. We will have time for Q&As towards the end of our session, but please utilize the chat box for questions as you think of them. It's also a great place to share resources because we know our community is very engaged in how films can be used in social, in engaging the audience and shifting the needle on important topics. Please be courteous in our chat box. This is a positive and affirming environment. Today's discussion is not meant to be exhaustive, not meant to be an exhaustive one. In the limited time we have, we hope to catalyze more conversation and spur more learning beyond today. So not only ask your questions, share your insights, share your learning, share your resources, because that's how we grow, right? I'm going to begin with introducing our first guest, Maggie Burnette Stogner. She is the executive director of the Center for Environmental Filmmaking and a professor of film and media arts at American University in Washington, D.C. She brings over 30 years of filmmaking experience to the center, to the classroom. She was on staff at National Geographic TV and Film for nearly a decade, where she produced, directed, and wrote numerous documentaries and was senior producer to the award-winning series Explorer. In 2005, she launched the independent media company Blue Bear Films, creating films and immersive media for world touring cultural exhibitions for National Geographic, Smithsonian, Lucasfilms, and others. She creates documentaries and outreach campaigns that inspire and inform, including the award-winning Upstream Downriver in 2022, which we will be discussing here, Unbreathable, The Fight for Healthy Air in 2020, In the Executioner's Shadow in 2018, Gold Mountain in 2016, and others. Maggie, before you begin your visual description, I forgot to do mine, so I'm just going to do that right now. Sorry, people, in the interest of getting started, I forgot to do a visual description of myself. I am a South Asian woman with dark black brown hair. I'm wearing a spectacles, which kind of like, Harry Potter glasses with metal frame. I have shoulder length hair, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt with a flower print on them, and I'm calling in from New York City, the unceded land of the Lenape people. Maggie, take over.
Thank you so much. And it's really an honor to be here. And it's great to see you, Chithra. It's really, I'm really pleased to be able to join everybody today. I'm Maggie Stogner, Maggie Burnette Stogner. Where should I start?
Well, your description, visual description, and where you're joining from.
Blonde hair, black frame glasses, definitely over 50, black sweater, paisley blue scarf around my neck, and I am in the DC area, which is the land of the Piscataway and Pamunkey people.
Okay, and I think Baldwin is going to show the trailer for Upstream Downriver, Maggie. So let's take a moment to look at that.
Clean water should never be a partisan issue. Politics should never play a role in that, and it didn't for a long time.
Our industry, the way we make things, attacks the fabric and stability of nature, the ecosystem.
There was a time when the steel industry argued that all the pollution they put in the rivers sanitized the water, so it actually made it healthier for people to drink.
I am not going to be hopeless by any means. I want to make sure that science is brought to the table, that people understand and engage, because it's about them and their health.
And he listed all the things it found in his well, some of which are hexavalent chromium, cobalt, lead, strontium, antimony. This is toxic. Who would give this to their kids?
The stakes are very severe. If we don't fix these river problems, I think civilization as we know it will greatly change.
The gamut of the things that no one else wants ends up in communities of color, ends up in low-income and working-class white communities, ends up in indigenous people's lands. Those communities are the sacrifice zones in our country.
Wow, stunning trailer, and the stakes are high, and our water, our air, the planet we live on, right? So delighted to have you. Can't wait to jump in for the conversation. Is there anything you want to add before we introduce Melody?
I'm looking so forward to having this discussion, and I think that this kind of discussion can really be very powerful in and of its own right. And this film, I'll talk about it when you ask questions, but yeah, so let's just dive in. Yeah.
Awesome. Now we will introduce our other panelist, Melody Miller. Melody C. Miller is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and cinematographer with a passion for storytelling. She has produced and directed 2 critically acclaimed feature documentaries that have had a profound impact on audiences worldwide. California's Forgotten Children sheds light on important human rights issues and received recognition for fostering a movement of change, while her uplifting documentary about one of the influential poets of the Beat generation, Ruth West, The Beat Goddess, earned an Emmy Award for Best Historical and Cultural Documentary. Melody is passionate about creating impactful and meaningful projects that not only engage, but also spark important conversation and drive positive change. Through her clear creative vision in storytelling and technical powers, Melody continues to push boundaries, leaving an indelible mark on every project she undertakes. Shall we look at the trailer?
My childhood was filled with just constant trauma, and at the same time I had to hide it and had to act like it was a normal childhood life. It became clear as I got older that my parents had planned on selling me the whole time.
A lot of times in growing up in the foster care system, I just was put in positions where I was abused verbally, sexually, you know, all these different ways. And I was also being told that I was nothing but a paycheck.
As a foster care child, when you are missing, you get in your file that you are run away. It's closed and put on the shelf. That's it.
I was attacked by these predators within a matter of hours from first and then out into the street. That's how fast it happens.
We know this worldwide, that when children are abandoned, neglected, or abused, and they end up in this vulnerable place, that they can be and will be exploited by people.
When you don't realize that you're being manipulated, when you don't realize that someone is in essence coercing you into the worst part of your life, and you think that they're trying to help you.
I had been in about 6 music videos and a few magazines, and so girls were asking me, oh, I saw you in a video, hey, can you bring me, how do I get involved? Girl, that was so pretty, but if only people knew what was behind the scenes.
We're criminalizing children for sexual abuse. Even though they cannot legally consent to sex, they're being put in the juvenile justice system, locked up and incarcerated.
In juvenile hall, I had given up on life. I thought, I won't live. There's no way I'm gonna make it. And I was only 13, I wasn't even 14 yet. And I couldn't see myself making it to 16, maybe not even 15. It just wasn't even a thought that I would. That's a problem. That was a problem back then, and it's a problem today. It's why I got involved in this fight.
And so part of our role is to come out here and share hope and teaching them about the issue, because as long as they see it as just some girl that's out there selling herself, they're never gonna feel empowered to protect children and women in their communities.
As Californians, we must stare at the painful truths of our relationships, our neighborhoods, and our nation. Pervasive sexual assault, widening inequality, ineffective political systems, and the continued buying and selling of human beings for profit.
It can happen to anyone, anywhere, and because it's so huge and pervasive, we need a huge and pervasive movement to stop it.
Save our children! Save our children! Every child still valuable to be bought sold! Stop selling our children! Stop human trafficking!
This message that we can all do something needs to get out there. We have our unique abilities, talents that we can develop and then use. We can use those talents and we can develop them and we can change the world with them.
Such a moving and expansive, exploration and in-depth look at this topic, but also sort of centering the voice of people who have been, affected, but also sort of found ways to give back and shift the conversation and what's happening, right? Like, so appreciate what you're doing. Do you want to add something real quick before we introduce our third panelist?
Yeah, first off, I'm honored to be here today. Thank you so much for having me and discussing about the film. I'm coming in from Los Angeles, and I recognize the land that I currently occupy and inhabit, and is cared for by the Tongva, Tatawiyum, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples, and we honor and pay respect to their elders, descendants, past, present, and emerging as they continue their stewardship. And I'm a Eastern Mediterranean and European American woman in my 30s with curly brown hair and eyes, wearing a blue shirt. Blue represents the color of anti-trafficking. So what I'd like all of y'all to do today is to kind of close your eyes and envision the color blue for a few seconds. And then when you open your eyes, I want you to look around your room, and if you see any color that's blue that you didn't notice before. I see a couple of different blues around my room. And, you didn't notice them before, and that is why the color blue is so important, because we're seeing things that were already there that we might not have noticed. And that's, our goal for the documentary is for you to see dangerous situations, victims, risk factors that sometimes are around us, but we don't really see or really notice. So thank you for having me here today.
Wow, wow. Thank you, Melody, for centering us in that way. And if people want to sort of, share your blue reflection on the chat, please go ahead and do so while I introduce our third panelist, Dr. Angela Aguayo, who is an associate professor in the Department of Media and Cinema Studies and acting director of the Roger Ebert Center for Film Studies at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Angela's scholarly research and production practices reflect on interdisciplinary focus on documentary, media studies, rhetoric, critical and cultural studies. She's focused on the possibilities for the documentary to engage the process of social change, with a specific attention to collective identification and the new media technologies used in conjunction with the genre to mobilize participatory media publics. As a scholar, media artist specialist specializing in participatory and engaged media, her most recent book, Documentary Resistance, Social Change and Participatory Media, investigates the political impact of documentary practice. Aguayo is also an award-winning director and producer of documentary shorts utilized in community engagement campaigns. These are exhibited at museums and viewed at film festivals around the world, including such prestigious sites as Anthology Film Archives, the Art Institute of Chicago, and Harvard University. Most recently, as they are the founding director of the Illinois Community Media Project, establishing efforts to support media production opportunities for underserved communities across the state of Illinois. We are so proud to have you here. Welcome. Do you want to go ahead and do a visual description, please?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here and have the time to commune and talk about really important things. I'm a 50-year-old woman who has brown curly hair and a cream sweater. I'm also on the land of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Penobscot, Miami, Muscatine, Ottawa, Sauk, Muscatine, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations.
Thank you so much. As you all can see, this is going to be an amazing conversation. We have three filmmakers whose work, clearly are addressing important societal challenges that we are grappling with, but also we have a scholar here who sort of uses or are looking at the intersection of filmmaking, participant, and organizations that are using films for advancing conversations on important societal issues. So let's begin with questions for both our filmmakers. How did you come to these stories and what compelled you to make them? Melody, do you want to start?
Of course. So I watched a documentary about child trafficking when I was 16 years old on YouTube, and a fury bursted inside of me that how could someone do something horrible and horrific to children? And so I wanted to go volunteer at a local nonprofit to help stop that. And I was living in Oakland, and I started volunteering for Missy, which is motivating, inspiring, supporting, and serving sexually exploited youth. And I started by helping out sweeping the floors to collecting general necessities and going to their trainings on anti-trafficking and how to work with survivor leaders or kids who have been exploited. And I thought I was going to be helping kids from other countries, but I found out that kids in my own high school were being trafficked. And like the prompt I kind of gave you guys earlier, the color blue, I started noticing signs of trafficking in my own school and while I'm taking the bus. And so that just really opened up my world. And I was also very passionate about documentaries. So after several months of working with them, I worked with them on a short documentary that helped raise awareness about trafficking in my community in Oakland. And it helped the organization do fundraising and educational opportunities and trainings. And once I went to UCLA, graduated high school. I continued to volunteer with local nonprofits here in Los Angeles, whether it was the anti-trafficking group at UCLA or Saving Innocents, California Against Slavery, Coalition to Abolish Slavery, and Youth Law, and a lot of great organizations here. Just whatever they needed. Someone at the door to help at a gala, or you know, fundraising through a bake sale, collecting general necessities. I also wanted to respect that, you know, I didn't need to meet any of the current clients that they were serving. You know, I just knew that they were helping them in order to protect their identities. But they invited me to retreats where I worked on little projects for them and their team. And then I asked them, what kind of a documentary do they need as a movement, all the organizations that I volunteered for and some of the survivor leaders that I met. And they said that there wasn't really an in-depth documentary that focused on survivor stories in California. And so that's when I started the journey making the documentary. And I was still a college student at UCLA, and I didn't have any money. So I took buses and walked around with my film equipment for hours, trains, and, you know, to do interviews. And because I had built up many years of trust and volunteer work, a lot of the organizations and leaders connected me with people, and survivor leaders organizations, police departments, FBI, who trusted me and I trusted them, and we worked on this project together. And it was a difficult, hard journey. It took 5 years to make, but it was all worth it for the amount of good it has done, not only in California, in the United States, but around the world. So really proud of what we have accomplished and all the good work that it's been doing to help people.
Wow. Thank you so much, Melody. Like, you know, students keep asking me, how do we get access? How do we go? I mean, you got to be there. You got to, you know, I think I appreciate you sharing the journey in, right? Like the presence, where it started. Our stories have, you know, it took you 5 years to make, but really I would say 15 years or so of like being there, being present, being engaged. And I love that you asked them, what is the film that, you know, you need to make, right? And also being cognizant of like, what does it mean to put someone on the screen? Like what, you know, especially if they are in the journey of going through. So appreciate so many things that you have been, you know, you've been centering as in the making of the film, but also in building trust and building community prior to that. Maggie, how did you come to this film?
Oh, well, first I want to say congratulations to Melody. It's such a powerful film and such an important topic. And I grew up in the Bay Area, so I think it resonates even more with me. And I will just go back in time because I think that deep passion is what grabs us and just makes it absolutely like, we have to do this film, right? As difficult as it is. And we all know that independent filmmaking is not easy. I grew up with I call her the water warrior, my mom, who passed away a few years ago, and 5'1", and she would be there in front of city council meetings and county council meetings, advocating for clean water, advocating for water rights, advocating for water equity. And we did have some scarce times of water back in those days even. But in particular, I remember there was a huge Chevron oil spill in the San Francisco Bay. And at that time, the pelicans were very endangered. And they took us out of school, me, my brother, and my sister, for a week. I think I was about 9, to go to the warehouse and help clean the oil sludge off of these beautiful birds that were so endangered. And I can still to this day hear those birds screaming. I mean, that just runs deep. And I think that that's what keeps us going in this difficult field. But with the Clean Water Act 50-year anniversary in 2020, 2022. And then before that in 2020 was the Clean Air Act anniversary. Those were both huge turning points in our national federal regulations about clean air and clean water. And my film Unbreathable came out in 2020 for the Clean Air Act, and Upstream Downriver. I'm sorry, I've got a bad cold, so let me try again. Upstream Downriver came out in 2022 for the Clean Water Act 50-year anniversary. And the thing about this federal law that is so important, I mean, you know, the EPA was founded in 1970 as well. It's that it promised, and the reinforcements in the 1990s promised clean, safe water for everybody. And that's just an amazing goal. And it was a time when we were putting, the first person on the moon and accomplishing great things as a country. The problem is that we hit mid-80s and even today, over half of our waterways are too polluted for drinking, swimming, fishing, aquatic life to live. So what happened? And, sometimes I think we forget that we, the people, are the government. And so these films really, to me, are a tool for community engagement and mobilization. It's ways to help our partners. We partner with a lot of different groups to help them really reach out and engage communities and get them, motivated and riled up to really affect policy. And it's the policy changes, which sounds kind of boring policy, but we're the ones who are responsible for that. We hold the policy in our hands. We can do this if we work together.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And wow, sweeping. I mean, sometimes the promise of the government is sweeping and expansive, and then how to implement it is sometimes forgotten, or accountability, or I think knowing the history of these acts and these bills and the people movement around it and the work, right, is also important for us to sort of remember what was, what is, and what can be, especially as we are navigating all the perils of climate change and with significant at an alarming pace, not significant, an alarming pace, right? So thank you for your film and thank you for your presence here.
Yeah, and if I just could add one thing, I mean, we have come a long way. And we don't have rivers catching on fire anymore. And, we don't have open sewage pits in some places. But look at what the climate crisis is doing. So it's not just that we need to kind of catch up to where we should be. We need to really prepare for what's ahead.
Thank you for adding that. Angela, your practice looks at the power of documentary to engage the process of social change, right? So can you speak to how, Upstream Downriver and California's Forgotten Children, the two films that we are sort of really centering today, can engage with the community and propel aspects of civil engagement, right? Because is sharing a film enough? What else? What can we do more?
Well, I mean, I think it was wonderful to spend some time with both of these works. They're incredibly well done production, technically, beautiful cinematography, and the really powerful stories to match the beautiful images. And these projects connect nodes of understanding that cannot easily be found in public culture. These stories are not explored in depth by commercial news, and our country doesn't adequately fund these kinds of important independent productions. And so the space that's being created by both of these films is really important. Documentaries make all sorts of impacts in the process of social change, in the process of, inquiry during pre-production, in production, post-production, and how it circulates through networks. I think we need to think about, it used to be that when films were studied, the intentions of the director and what the director intended to kind of overshadowed the secondary question, which is, how do these documentaries serve the people in or the subjects of the film? And there's a very broad spectrum. Films could represent social change, and so these are often historical takes on particular movements or actions. Documentaries can speak for social change, meaning they take the position of trying to represent the voices of people who cannot be on screen. And we see this delicately kind of interweaved in the documentary about trafficking, as, it would be problematic and ethical to bring young trafficking victims on the screen. So there's this kind of tethering between stories of people who are professionals but have had trafficking backgrounds with reenactments. And I think that was a really powerful way to play with those limitations. There's also speaking for, social change, which is films that try to be more active in the process of creating policy change or other forms of cultural change. There's collaborating and then engaging. And what all these different levels tell us is, what is the relationship between the director, the justice being the injustice being addressed, and the representation on the screen? And I would love to hear more about what we don't talk about often, which is, once this film was made, what did the filmmakers do with the film? And the reason why this is important is because these stories are very nuanced and unexpected. Sometimes change with film happens in very unusual ways. And so I would like to kind of maybe throw that question back to the filmmakers and ask, tell me about your screening. Tell me about your collecting of people. Tell me about how the film is being used in these organizations and institutions. And what does it mean beyond the representation? How have the representations been utilized?
I love that question. Both our filmmakers should sort of, jump in and sort of engage with that question.
I get very excited by this. I mean, we work very closely with the participants in our film. We spend a lot of time getting to know them and understanding what their needs are and making sure we're not just dropping, parachuting in and doing the extractive filmmaking thing. I mean, I think when you're working on these kinds of films, it's really important to establish those relationships and mutual, in a mutual beneficial way. So, in addition to things like, okay, the film is a half an hour, so we broadcast it on Maryland Public Television, and it's done the festival circuit. It still is. It has four screenings coming up in April all over the country. But we've also cut the shorts of the stories so that they can be used by the participants. For instance, Catherine Coleman Flowers in Alabama used her, we did a 5-minute segment for her, of her story so that she could use it with her keynote speech for the U.S. Climate Action Network. And we hope to do that with every story, and then we have partners from Green Latinos to American Rivers to the Water Keepers Alliance and Clean Water for All, which is a collective of 80 different organizations around the United States working on water justice issues. And so we're working with them in different ways to help provide screening support, panels. We did this with Unbreathable as well, to really make that outreach and that impact, to facilitate it. So in addition to being filmmakers, we're facilitators in that way. I think one of my favorites was the Los Angeles Water Keepers and the East Yard Collective Coalition for Environmental Justice, and about 5 other organizations, Friends of the LA River and others, did a river rally in a big park in Chinatown, and they did the screening on a Jumbotron. I've never had a film on a Jumbotron before, but it was such an outpouring of people, and there was such great discussion going on, and it was just really such a community event. I was really excited about that. So it's from small scale to really, national screenings, across the board. We premiered with the BC Environmental Film Festival. Thank you, BCEFF. When it first came out, and it just it's multi-tiered, and we continue. And I think one of the things that sometimes we do a film and we think, okay, we've done a film and it's been out for a year and it can't really do any more good. But that's not true. We're still screening Unbreathable, and the film I made about the death penalty in 2018 is still screening. I think these issues don't go away, and if you make a film that's a little bit on the timeless side and shows different facets of the issue and is well done, people will continue to use them. I think community groups are desperate for tools like this.
And it's such a perfect length as well, right? It's 30 minutes. It's long enough to watch a film and engage with. And I love, and I really appreciate that you've kind of edited down versions that you're the experts in the film are able to sort of use it for their works. It's not just that it needs to be used in one form or shape, right? Like there could be other segments that can go and be part of other ways of engaging. I do want you to kind of maybe take a little bit of time to speak about like one, like, as I watched the film, like I kind of, wrote that down, repeal the right to pollute. Like, was that even a real thing? I mean, just it was, I kind of went back to, like, it just blew, like we actually had to repeal the right to pollute. Like I mean, I again, to reiterate, sometimes the historic journey of how movements, that citizenship came into being, is important for the young people or people who are like at the forefront of climate conversations, to know where things were, how far we have come, and what, to sort of feel empowered, to feel positive, to feel hopeful. Can you speak about, is there any kind of historical engagement, or if there's any kind of school and, sort of in other dimensions, is this film being used?
Yeah, no, I think the historical dimension is really important because it does provide a sense of how far we've come. And, the idea that companies were just dumping, no controls at all. I mean, just dumping, and, and sewage was just going in. And I think what you end up with is then kind of a measuring stick. How far have we come, and where are we still falling short? And so, that's opened up a lot of interesting, the policy side of it. And our partners, the Center for Environmental Policy, are very instrumental in this. We've had screenings with the EPA Alumna Group, which is, I think like 300 people that have worked in and out of the EPA. And then the EPAs have people cycle in and out. So like Mustafa Ali Santiago, who's in the trailer, is now at the National Wildlife Federation. And, and those concentric circles of people, every time you do a screening, you're connecting with somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And I think it's really important, and Greta Thunberg has done this with her films, is created a cross-generational outreach program. And I think we should all do that, because I think there's kind of this like division between older people and younger people, and that shared knowledge isn't happening, and that shared engagement isn't happening. So, to be able to think about how can we bring together different age groups and really have these discussions. And that Greta Thunberg, if you look on her website, she has an outreach group that's been really pushing this. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Melody, as you're going to talk about how you've been engaging with the film, like, Angela's question, I'd also want you to kind of, can you focus on, the story of women and the music and pop culture, and, like you kind of also get into this dimension of that, like, so start with talking about where it's screening and kind of go into that. And then if Angela, after Melody's done, sort of maybe speak about how music and pop culture uses the words like pimping, and how these shape, these shapes shift some of these, break these mainstream media framing of stuff, and why that is important. Melody, take over, please.
Yeah, thank you. So to go on Angela's question, before I started the journey of the documentary, I worked with nonprofit and survivor leaders to create a kind of contract promise that I give to the survivor leaders in the film, that they would get to see the movie before it's done, that if they didn't feel comfortable with some of the things in the film, we could take it out, and I'd work with them. And so that was really important to me and for them, and it made it super comfortable when I finished the film, and I gave them like monthly updates for the years I was working on it, and all the people in the film. So that was really important to me. And then once the film came out, it was my first documentary, so it was like, all right, do the festivals. I thought it was going to be getting into the biggest festivals, and it was so near and dear to my heart that when I started receiving the rejections, it was just like, I was gutted, and I didn't want to tell any of them, because like it was so personal to me and to them, sharing something so vulnerable, and to be rejected by a festival, it felt like their stories didn't matter. And now I know that the festivals get thousands of submissions, and they have to choose. But at that moment, when it's your first film where you spent years working on it, and it's like so personal, gosh, it hurted. But we started getting into festivals, and people in the community started to spread its message, and it started changing lives. Like almost at every film festival we went to, there would be a survivor who would come up and share their story. They felt comfortable, like after watching the documentary, that they are seen. Or some survivors didn't know that they were survivors or didn't understand what they went through until they saw the documentary. So that was extremely powerful. And once we started doing community screenings and collaborating with all sorts of organizations, from nonprofits to police departments to the Social Security Department, juvenile justice, hospitals, it was increasingly powerful. And, this film was made for the community. It wasn't made for film festivals. And, it did get into 20 film festivals, which is great. But I think what really was important was just bringing it together with the community. And it created job opportunities for the survivor leaders in the film to come and speak about the movie or do trainings with the staff at their the organizations. Like we recently did one with the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, who own Yamava Hotel and Casino, and they brought all their executives who run the casino to watch the documentary, and had myself, Rachel Thomas from the documentary, and Gamila Mohammed, who is an advocate for anti-trafficking and implementing in high schools, and several other local nonprofits and organizations. And it was really a powerful event that everybody could like get involved and do something. And so many, within a few days, like they were able to stop a victim from being trafficked just after the screening. So that was a beautiful event. And so to go to your question about the pop culture and music, video. When I was in high school, I watched music videos and wanted to be like the dancers in the film or sing the songs, and you don't really realize, or listen to the words of the music until you do, and you're like, oh my God, that's horrific. That's horrible, dehumanizing. And just because it has a good beat, some artists are saying or what they're doing in videos doesn't mean that it's good. And so that was crazy for me, because Rachel Thomas in the documentary, who appeared in a lot of TI music videos, I used to dance, or Sierra, when I was in high school, I danced to that music video, and I saw her in it. And it's crazy that years later I get to meet her and hear her story, and that was just mind-blowing for me.
So I'm gonna ask Angela to jump in right on that, because I think it's really, really important. Could you take a moment to kind of talk about that, and Sam would come in right after that.
Yeah, I know we gotta wrap up here, so I'll make it quick. I just want to say that I want to underscore that the logics of community media and festival interests are often different. And we have to kind of remember that, and that you come from a long line of community media makers, like from George Stoney to now, who have been making these contracts with their communities when they make films. And we could have a longer conversation about the value of that. But I will say that I really appreciated Molly's inclusion of popular culture and music and language in a way that might connect young people to what was happening. I mean, I think the analysis of pimping is actually quite interesting. It addresses the way the language has been normalized, yet pimping is a horrific and violent act of enslavement, and that continues to happen in hush corners and parts of our society that we don't want to look at. So I think, Melody did a really excellent job of of providing that kind of analysis of that language and that impact in a way that was really kind of sat underneath the story in an effective way.
Thank you. And Sam is going to come in to give some important announcements. But Melody, I want you to think about, there's a question from the audience on how you kind of chose between animation, live reenactment stories, and all these different media to sort of tell the story. But I'm going to let Sam make her announcement, and then we'll come back to you for that answer.
Hi, everybody. Don't worry. I'm going to be brief. I don't want to take away from this amazing conversation. But quickly, my name is Sam Flakin. I am New Day's marketing specialist. And before we move into more questions, I'm just going to make a couple of quick announcements. New Day Films offers DVDs and a variety of streaming licenses for our diverse collection of films, for the educational, community, and corporate purposes, including films on environmental studies and human rights, and just a ton of other subjects, pretty much anything you're interested in. So please visit our website, newday.com, to see our entire collection of films. I would also love it if you would follow us on social media. We are on Facebook at New Day Films, and we are also on X, formerly known as Twitter, at New Day Films. We're on Instagram at New Day Doc Films, and you can also find us on LinkedIn. The films featured in today's conversation are available on newday.com and on Canopy, so I encourage you to follow up and look at them there. And if you are attending this event as a filmmaker and you might be interested in joining New Day, the next webinar for new filmmakers is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024 at 11 a.m. Eastern, which is 8 a.m. Pacific. So as soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to drop that link in the chat so you can get more information. And finally, if you're a professor or a media librarian or someone interested in a one-on-one curatorial consultation with me, please reach out. You can email me at sam@newday.com, and we can set up a meeting, and happy to chat about your needs and tailor some selections from our collection to you and your organization. So all of this is going to go in the chat, and that's how you'll be able to follow up. But that's it for me. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chithra. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. So once again, I'm going to center the question that's in the chat. Could Melody talk about how her team devised to use animation and live action reenactment for the survivor stories? How did the team decide which style was appropriate for which story?
Of course. So I think it was important that we didn't show any images of children who are currently being trafficked or who had been trafficked, because they might not want to share it. They might not want to be open about their story or people to know about it. And so that's why I work with survivor leaders who were anti-trafficking experts in the field, who have shared their stories in other documentaries and on the news and do lectures and trainings. So that was really important. And I had images and pictures, but myself, I felt like it was important to show what a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, sometimes 2-year-old child, looks like. And that it's not just a blurry face. And so I worked with actors to recreate some of the stories using poetic imagery. So not reenacting the horrific acts, that's horrible, but using visuals as one of the stories. One of the young girls talked about how she would count rocks in the yard and collect them. And during some of the parts that were painful that she talked about, we showed a visual of a little girl in her backyard counting rocks. So it was imagery like that that kind of showed moments of their lives and intercut with their story and images. Apart for animation, like some of the stories were very dramatic and intense, and it's not something that we can put the lives of other people in danger trying to film something like that, or putting our own lives in danger. And so using animation to tell that story, some of the stories in the film, like when Sarai saves a girl from a hotel room that was about to be gang raped. I think it told it it was a difficult story to tell, but it kind of put it in a way that was a little bit childlike, but also empowering. And there were some elements that maybe recreation couldn't do to express what they were trying to do. Like, for example, Sarai, at that moment, she gets this power to stand up to this guy who is about to rape this girl. She took her, and the guy was saying, "That's my girl." And at that moment, she rises up and became really scary. And the guy got scared of her. And in the animation, she grows really big, that the traffickers were scared of her, and she was able to walk out with the girl. Now, what she did was very dangerous in that situation. She knew the child and she knew the streets and how to talk to people, but she did put her life at risk. So I don't recommend doing that for anyone who sees a child being commercially sexually exploited. Call the human trafficking hotline, call the police, 888-37-37-888, file a police report, and call the human trafficking hotline, and they'll send people out there to help with the situation. So that's how I kind of chose to do the recreations and the animation. But it was it became a family. All of the children who were involved with the film, their parents were involved and supportive. And it's been amazing to see those children grow up and what they're doing right now, also still involved in the movement and raising awareness. And to the musicians, composers, animators, to everybody who helped out, I gratefully thank them.
Thank you, Melody. That was so insightful. Like, just to really think about how is the story going to translate on screen? What is the points of empathy and connection for the audience, and what people can linger with, right? Angela, so part of your work is sort of focusing on participatory media, right? And can you speak about, like, and I love Melody saying how people got to see the cuts and they had a say in the story. But what are other ways filmmakers can be thoughtful about engaging people, maybe even giving the power of the filming or editing? Like, what can we do more?
I think that that we should think carefully. I mean, as I was listening to this conversation, I'm like, what would it sound like, or what would it be like to have trauma-informed documentary production, right? To like really name and label the things that I think are a struggle with this work, which is, whose story do we get to tell? In whose name do we get to say it? Like, and who gets to be the author of that? And so, as I mentioned George Stoney earlier, there's a whole long line successive of filmmakers who have baked into their production process a conversation about authorship. So one way that I saw this happening with, in particular, Melody's film, is that, she turned to the community she was working with and said, and I do this often in my own work, what film needs to be told, what film needs to happen about this topic? There's a lot of ways this could happen. And when I first turned on Melody's film, I was like, I'm not hearing much from actual people who had been trafficked. And then I realized suddenly her experts were those people, and what's beautiful about that, and I think, is that you got to hear from people who are on the other side of it, right? So not getting really mired down in like the confusion part that would happen if you probably talk to someone who's in the middle of it or recovering from it, right? So like, when you talk to people, how you talk to them, in what space, what kind of power they can be in, so that they can take the reins of authorship. I come from a long line of filmmakers. I worked with Ellen Sparrow, who was also at the University of Texas for a long time, who taught me to give cameras to to cameras to my participants. Like, I worked on a project with her where we were doing a documentary about Girl Scout troops who were in prison.
Troop 1500.
And we didn't want to leave those girls getting recorded in the most vulnerable moments of their lives with just that representation. So she talked me into running camps to teach them how to run film music videos and how to do their own narrative film, and have the skills to record, even if they weren't recording their own story at that moment, to have the skills in the future to be able to author themselves. So there's a lot of things filmmakers can do in the moment of production, or to secure the agency and authorship of the people that they're working with in the future, to have the ability to tell their own stories. I could go on and on about this forever, but I know we don't have a lot of time.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. So I think we have about a minute for the three of you, so about 25 seconds. Where can people watch these films? And Angela, can filmmakers reach out to consult with you as they're working through this, to think about it, or are there other ways you interface with filmmakers?
Yeah, absolutely. I will probably be contacting both Maggie and Melody. I'm writing a new book called Collective Matters, which is all about kind of the micro practices of engagement that happen with documentary. And all my films and things are free on Vimeo, so you can find those there.
Melody and Maggie, how can people, share or, access these films?
Okay, yeah, so you can watch California's Forgotten Children on New Day. You can purchase The Life of the File, and you can have it forever and use it for trainings in your classrooms. You can also view it on Canopy, and you can work with me if you want to bring it to your school or have me come or any of the survivor leaders come speak. One of the things I'm pushing right now is getting into high schools. We've developed a curriculum that's trauma informed, working with the survivor leaders in the film, and we've educated over 2,000 students and gotten feedback before and after the film from freshmen and seniors. And with that, we've developed this curriculum for the kids, and it's already helped recover several victims of not only trafficking but homelessness and abuse at home. So if you'd love to bring the film to your community or your college, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before Maggie jumps on, I'm just going to add for folks in the room, our next Reframe and Refresh is on April 25th at 2 p.m. New Perspectives on Asian and Muslim Identity in America. So that's a topic. Mark the calendar for our next Reframe and Refresh, April 25 at 2 p.m. So Maggie, where can people watch the film?
Oh, same thing. New Day Films. Yeah, please take a look. We have anywhere from 14-day licenses to lifetime licenses, and then it's also available on Canopy. I encourage media librarians from different universities to take a look at all of New Day's portfolio. And we really try to offer a lot of screening support and are often, and I do want to give a shout out to my co-producer, Marissa Woods. She's amazing. And we do try to help find speakers if special experts are needed or whatever. And we are not just theater screeners, if it's in a speakeasy, that's fine. In a town hall, that's fine. In a school, that's fine. I think we need to bring these films to wherever the communities want to meet and not always be so formal about it. So happy to work with everybody. Our website is Unbreathable. Anyway, that's one of our websites, upstreamdownriver.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this engaging conversation. Our panelists were amazing. Their work is amazing. We will be emailing you resources that were shared during the panel, and this webinar is recorded, so that will be shared as well, and the chat will be shared. And save the date for our next Reframe and Refresh, and definitely check out New Day Films on various topics that our communities need to be engaging with, and reach out to our panelists if you are interested in having deeper conversations with them. Thank you so very much for joining us, and that's a wrap from us.